What's up, guys? Asian here with what's essentially going to be a React video today. So this video was brought to my attention recently. It was streamed, I think, 2 days ago at this point. Let's see, 3 days ago actually. So kind of behind the ball here, but I just wanted to kind of put a reaction to this just because of the people involved in the video. So obviously, Skinny Cheeks is a well-known, well-liked endgame PvE theory crafter who's been putting out builds for quite some time. I have kind of interacted with him a lot in the Nephis' ESOU Discord, so I am familiar with sort of his builds, his style, his video presentations, things like that. Um, he's a great theory crafter. And this channel is Mystics MMOs, also known as Mystic Ravens, or for those of you guys who, in the far past, might know him better as ESO Daily. So he was the one who sort of started the spat with God, I'm blanking on his name. Gilliam the Rogue, back when Gilliam, before Gilliam joined ZeniMax, joined the ESO team. And if you guys recall, Nephis did a reaction on that, and I also did a reaction on, I don't remember if it was a reaction on Nephis or a reaction on his actual video. But yeah, I haven't seen this video yet, so this will kind of be a first time reaction. But I'm kind of just knowing the video uploader, I kind of have an idea of what to anticipate here.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Mystics MMOs. I'm your host, Mistickraven. Okay, first off, let's do this, shall we? There's a lot of things I need to cover. So, nobody's posting out builds.
That is just a straight up lie. People are definitely putting up builds. They might not be builds that he likes, but I would be incredibly surprised if people like Nephis or I think Skinny still plays, but I'd be incredibly surprised if they haven't put up builds yet for this new patch. I think it's Deadlands that just came out or something like that.
So, Skinny Chick seems to be leading the pack. He's got the Deadlands, MagDK, PvE guide. So this is the top DPS output. So this is his configuration. We're going to go a stat review.
What's the stat
His
review?
stat review over mine. And we'll even
I mean,
take
I mean, he's just looking at like the raw stats, like max magicka, spell damage, that kind of shit.
So,
Because the stats don't tell the whole story.
One Piece Slime Crawl, Kilt. Who taught them that, by the way? Anybody know? Anybody know who came up with that first? Hashtag timestamps matter. Oh,
I'm pretty
right.
sure it was us.
Never mind. Moving on.
He's talking about harpooners, which I believe. Let me real quick double check on ESO sets real fast. But I think harpooners came out. Although I guess the ESO set might be. I don't think it'll actually tell me when it came out. Okay, so it came out in Blackwood. And I'm pretty sure Harpooners, when Blackwood was first released, was something that pretty much everybody in the PvE community was like, this is going to be the next big mythic. I'm blanking on what the first mythic was. It was some sort of ring. But everyone was like, oh yeah, Harpooners, definitely going to be something you're going to be wanting to wear on PvE. And this was way back in the PTS of Blackwood. I remember the whole Blackwood PTS. People were testing out harpooners. It was really good. And this was the mythic item where you had to like farm for those water nodes. So it was a big uproar about people just sitting there and farming these water nodes in the Blackwood. I'm blanking on the zone name, but everybody was like sitting there in that one zone farming for those water nodes. So if he's trying to imply that he was the one who thought of this, no, he's completely wrong. Nephis and all the other top end PvE theory crafters have already had their eyes on harpooners pretty much right from day one of the Blackwood BTS.
Slime Crawl, Bases, Kilt. Now here's what's kind
I
of
think Base's
Bases and Sororia. Okay. Say it, homies, say what? I'll go over that. I'll go over that in a second. Because that, to me, about made me spit my fucking drink out. And I'll show you why. And
Let's
then
see what his
Sororia Inferno staff.
see what his rationale is.
And then he has the Maelstrom Inferno staff. You can use the daggers if you want. And I've linked the description below. Okay. Right there, Maelstrom Inferno staff. Inferno.
What's wrong with that? Inferno's always been the back bar.
Let's go help people customize and save with Liberty Mutual.
Oh, that's right. I'm on.
Okay, who sat at my desk?
I forgot.
Does this T-shirt come with a men's
incognito.
tampon
I
pocket
didn't
too?
want his.
Or will I
stuff
need
to
to
be.
Here's the setup. Now he said, "Oh, divine. There's no such thing as a diminishing return in this game." No, there's not.
Yes. For those of you guys who aren't aware, this is the guy who is insistent on diminishing returns being a thing and indifferent curves and all sorts of weird bullshit stuff. Technically speaking, diminishing returns aren't really a thing in this game. I mean, the idea behind diminishing returns is not the same idea that he's sort of espousing here. Basically, if you guys are aware, as you start to stack more of one stat, the increase that you're getting is going to end up being less in terms of the relative DPS increase. So if you're starting at 1,000 spell damage, for example, and something adds 500, that's obviously a 50% increase. But if you're starting at 2,000, that same 500 only gives you a 25% increase. So the relative increase is going to be smaller. That is, so you can kind of argue that as being diminishing returns to a certain extent. And I have no idea what he means by indifference curves if he brings it up in this video at all.
There's not. Who in the fuck lets these people fucking just... Here's the setup. Flame damage precise. The reason staff's kind of good, in certain fights, you don't have melee range. So Infernos are good.
Yeah, that's true.
Daggers, I agree with them. Daggers is a good option. So I agree with that. So I agree. You know, Sororia is a good set. You know. I also like his call on the infused with the weapon damage enchantment.
That has
I agree
always
with that
been
too.
that's been
Really
there
good.
for a while.
It's just the way to go. Slime Crawl Kilt, well, you know. Some genius thought of that and hit up the curve ahead of time. I don't know.
It was
brilliant individual.
It was all the PvE theory crafters on
Divine?
day one PTS when they released the patch notes. He's trying to say he made it up. He did not.
Then Bases. Now, what's the problem here? And does anybody want to see the problem? I got perfected on, by the way.
Bases is a set that I'm not familiar with because that was after my time. Pull up any of those sets. Weapon spell damage, 3-piece minus Slayer. It's a trial set, of course. Crit chance, 5-piece increase damage done to non-player enemies by up to 15%, depending on your... Oh, okay. I am familiar with this one. This is the one where it's you do more damage based. Your damage done modifier increases based on missing magicka. So the idea here is you kind of want to make sure your magicka is down below a certain percentage during the whole fight to get the maximum amount out. I believe it is a linear increase, so if you're sitting at like 50% magicka, you get a 7.5% damage done bonus.
Not that everybody
it was
will
a pretty good
perfected,
set,
but I did put the perfected on intentionally just to give the
I think
stats
the perfected
the boost.
adds an additional spell damage.
Does
weapon damage
anybody
boost.
see a problem with this combo? I don't know.
I don't
Does
see a
anybody
problem.
see it? Does anybody see
I don't see a problem at all with this.
with this combo, this setup?
So I am not playing ESO and I have no intention of going back, but I am aware enough of sort of the meta shifts. If you guys recall, I was on Nephus's stream kind of reviewing the day one patch notes for the latest DLC, where they basically capped out crit damage, and I sort of gave my opinion on where I think the meta would be shifting. My thoughts initially were they're probably going to shift towards crit chance as well as spell damage, just because those are probably going to be the two next strongest bonuses to your damage. Crit chance, obviously, because of crit modifier being the strongest mod, and then spell damage because it's relatively easy to stack spell damage, at least compared to like max Magicka on a Magicka DPS. A stamina would pretty much be the same thing. Crit chance and weapon damage. It's a lot easier to stack weapon damage and max stam on DPS in general. So that's sort of the direction I thought the meta was going to shift. So Sororia is that magic spell damage buff, and then Bases gets you that additional but that additional damage done modifier. I don't know whether or not they took out a lot of damage done modifiers, or if I don't think they changed the damage calculations. But damage done modifiers are also pretty strong, especially with something as big of a value as Bases. If you're able to consistently get your Magicka down below like the 50 to 30% range, that's pretty good because it's a linear increase. So you're taking a look at least 8% damage done modifier if you're able to sit consistently below 50% Magicka.
Anybody? I don't know. Anybody? Let me check the comments. Anybody? What's up, Ross? I see you mentioned Skinny Cheeks. What I miss? Oh, we're doing a stat review, Dave. We're doing a stat review of his build right here. Bases and Sororia.
I see he still hasn't activated Windows yet.
Does we're going to do a stat.
Yeah, he still hasn't activated Windows.
Does anybody see a problem? Anybody? I don't know. Here's Bases. I got perfected, but I mean, anybody see some conflict? It's just there's something just there that makes no sense. Does anybody see it?
I think I know what he's gonna. I think I know what he's gonna try to talk about. I think he's gonna be trying to talk about the fact that it's 2 trial sets and you're stacking up Minor Slayer. Minor Slayer doesn't stack because it's a minor buff, so you're not able to double dip into it. But there have been precedent where we have stacked 2 trial sets before. Stamina DPS back in the day when they were halfway decent, you would wear Reliquins and Laquestes. Both of those are trial sets, so obviously you're double dipping into the Minor Slayer, so you're only getting the benefit of 1. But the idea behind wearing 2 trial sets is that the 5-piece of 1 is stronger than the 3-piece of the standard 3-piece. So your standard 3-piece would be either that 1096 max stats, 129 spell weapon damage, or I believe they dropped the crit chance down to 690 something crit chance. So the 5-piece would be stronger than a standard 3-piece bonus. So in that instance, you're still coming out ahead, even though your 3-piece on one of your sets isn't really, basically is non-existent. That's sort of the premise behind wearing 2 trial sets. So in the example I gave earlier of Reliquin and Laquestes, the idea behind it was that Reliquin, this was back when Reliquin was super busted. You had 20 stacks and you can easily get like 6k per ticks with max stacks. So obviously that was really busted. And then you had Laquestes, which was the Major Slayer back when Major Slayer was 15%, which was also really busted because you could get full uptime on Major Slayer with Laquestes. Both of those 5-piece bonuses were strong enough to offset the 3-piece standard bonus. So that was why you could use 2 trial sets, because no other set would be able to provide you that additional bonus. So basically there was no other alternative to Laquestes or Reliquin where the 5-piece and a standard armor bonus would outweigh the 5-piece of either of those sets. So something like Briarheart, for example, the weapon damage from the 5-piece along with the standard 3-piece bonus, that would not outweigh the Major Slayer uptime or the Reliquin 5-piece bonus. So that was kind of the rationale behind doing 2 trial sets. So that is actually not an issue at all, depending on how the math works out. So I haven't touched on the math obviously in ESO for a while. Sororia I know is nerfed. Bases I'm not sure. I haven't really played around with it, but I'd imagine the value, the 15% damage done value hasn't changed, at least on ESO sets. It doesn't look like it's changed. So think of the damage done 15%. That's pretty much a Major Slayer bonus, old Major Slayer bonus. Obviously it's scaling based on missing Magicka, but at the very least you can get like 8% probably on average, maybe a little bit more than that. So that's a pretty big. 8% damage done bonus is pretty big. It's basically an additional minor Berserk that's not stacking. I guess, I don't know if Berserk has changed at all, but Berserk used to be 8% additional damage done. So it's basically an additional minor Berserk on top of that doesn't stack. That stacks with minor Berserk. So like that alone is huge. So I can see the math working out where the 5-piece would outweigh another set's 5-piece and a 3-piece standard armor bonus.
Anybody? I don't know. I don't know. Something's missing here. Oh, that's right. 2 minor slayers.
Yep, that's what I thought he was going to say.
Interesting.
And I just gave the rationale for
Interesting.
why you would
Very
might
interesting.
want to do 2 trial sets. Again, Boss Ace is essentially just an additional minor berserk that can stack on top of it.
It's divine.
So,
Everything's max magic.
so
on this, by
math-wise,
the way.
I'd imagine it would work out. And the fact that
Boss
Ace 5
and we got
piece, Orsa Warriors
not
5
one,
piece plus
not
the
2, all 3 bloodthirsties.
yeah.
All three are bloodthirsty because 90% of the time we don't want that extra spell damage. No, we wanted it the last 10% of the fight. That's where it matters the most.
I'm not sure what it means by 10% in the fight. So bloodthirsty here, they changed it back quite a while ago. So the change was after I quit. But it increases your weapon spell damage against enemies under 90% health by up to 350. Again, it's a linear scale, so when they're at 45% health, you get half of that value, so 175, I believe it is. Bloodthirsty is still a very, very strong trait. The change to Bloodthirsty made it closer to Infused in terms of strength, so I think, unless things have changed since then. But I think I did the math back in the day when they first decided to change it, and it ended up being, it closed the gap a little bit, but Bloodthirsty is still by and far the best, and stacking 3 Bloodthirsty is fine. I'm not sure what he means by the 10%, because the only time Bloodthirsty is not great is if things are dying really quickly, because then you're not getting as much uptime on the larger increase on your damage bonus.
Right. It's where it matters the most.
I'm not sure what he's talking about here. Yeah. Yeah, but
now,
Bloodthirsty is still the best jewelry trade in ESL by far.
Back bar,
or not by far, but it's definitely the best jewelry trade you can use for PvE.
For this was a good call. This was a good call.
I don't know why he's saying it's a good call. This back bar has always been the case for MagDKs.
Why do I use the lightning staff? Why?
Oh no. Oh no.
I don't know. I mean, we wouldn't want the extra damage on AoEs, would we? No.
So here's a very, very common misconception among newer players for the lightning staff and fire staff bonus. So under the destruction staff line, there are bonuses depending on which staff you're holding. So with your fire staff, you get additional single target damage bonus. With the lightning staff, you get additional AoE damage bonus. The problem is, unlike games like Final Fantasy 14, where you snapshot the ability, so whatever bonuses you get when you lay down a dot, that's what you get those bonuses for the entirety of the dot. So for example, let's say I'm playing a warrior and I have the buffs. No, warrior's a bad example. Trying to think of a class that has a dot. Let's just go with the bard. Let's say you're playing a bard. Here's a good one. Gunbreaker. Gunbreaker has a dot, has 2 dots actually. Gunbreaker also has a buff ability that increases the damage that you deal with all damage. If you do your dot without that damage buff, you basically snapshot the damage your dot's doing. So your dot will always do that same amount of damage even if you buff while the dot is up. Basically, it doesn't dynamically change. ESO is different in that a lot of skills do dynamically change. So if you have a lightning staff on your back bar, while you're on your back bar, you will get that additional AoE bonus. But on your front bar, if you have an Inferno staff, which you should as a Magicka DPS, or if you're wearing daggers, you won't get that AoE damage bonus because it's dynamically changing. So his idea that running a lightning staff back bar will boost the damage of the AoE on his back bar is correct, but only while you're on your back bar. Now, most DPS, or I should say all DPS, will be spending at least 70 to 75% of your time on your front bar, and that lines up with ESO logs. If you take a look at ESO logs and take a look at how much time is spent on front bar versus back bar, usually you're going to be sitting at around 70, 80 tops % uptime on your front bar. So you're talking about 20 to 30% uptime on the additional AoE buff on lightning staff. That's not worth justifying using the lightning staff on the back bar in exchange for the additional damage you would get from the Inferno staff on your back bar. because the Inferno Staff buff also buffs your light attacks. Light attack weaving is still very important for DPS. So you would need that additional light attack damage on your back bar. Plus, I think Unstable Wall of Fire is still better than Unstable Wall of Lightning in terms of damage, especially on a MagDK, because you do want the additional burning procs for MagDK, which you can't get obviously with Lightning Blockade.
Fuck no, we want that combustion passive. The DK
Well,
isn't going to keep it up 100% of the time, anyways. Given the fact that what?
Excuse me?
How often does combustion do? Every
Excuse me?
0.5 seconds? We got to have a flame.
Excuse me? MagDK is not getting 100% uptime on combustion. That is a sign of a bad MagDK. A MagDK, back when I played, you could very, very easily get a ton of burning procs between all of your dots going. You have Engulfing Flames, Searing Embers, Eruption, Unstable Wall of Fire, obviously your flame damage enchants. There were tons of ways you could proc burning. A MagDK that didn't have 100% burning uptime was probably dead for part of that fight. If you're alive for the entire fight, you could easily get 100% burning uptime, and you could easily get a burning proc. Maybe not every half a second, but you could very easily get one every 1 to 2 seconds. So like that's like combustion is pretty big here. In terms of like maintaining your burning uptime. If you drop your Fire Staff backbar for a Lightning Staff backbar, chances are you're also going to be dropping your burning uptime down maybe from like 95 to maybe like 80-ish%. And while 15% drop might not seem like a huge amount, when taking combustion as well as the secondary effect of Wall of Fire, that does add up. And in endgame PvE, those those small things that add up, they do make a difference. So he's just completely wrong at this point.
Because,
and this is only like 7 minutes in, so we're only like a third of the way through. I bet you part of the half of this is probably him ranting, so we'll probably just skip through that part. As entertaining as it might be.
Standard of might, yeah. If it's your bread and butter, if it's your preference, sure.
I don't what.
Now
Standard of might
is to the man.
Standard of might is absolutely necessary because of that additional damage done bonus.
It's good. It's good.
Well, you're in the standard. I mean, it's not going to be great for every fight because obviously they're mobile bosses. But like standard, that additional damage done while you're standing in it, that's huge.
We'll get the max Magicka scale.
That's huge.
The 10-to-1 is irrelevant. I mean, it's irrelevant, right? You guys know that. There's a 10-to-1 conversion on max stats.
10.5, but close enough.
Versus spell damage. Right?
But
we all know that. I mean, we're sitting at 34,000, almost 35. I mean, that's pretty impressive.
But it's not insignificant. Inner light is like it's 8% when you take into consideration Mage's Guild passives, but 8% additional max Magicka is substantial in terms of effective spell damage.
Don't know if people know that. I do.
I'm pretty sure the 10.5 to 1 is fairly
pretty much
well
this layout's pretty good. Molt Whip's really good. He's not going to get the off balance. He talks about that. I recommend watching the video.
Off balance should still be supports, I think, unless something's changed.
We're going to see what everything
usually
stacks
off balance
up to.
is support responsibility,
right?
not MagDK.
Okay, so his
you shouldn't be providing your own off balance,
like
basically.
The crit's at 52%. We're definitely going to get higher with the kilt, and given the fact that we're using the Thief Mundus, that's going to amp our percentage up, quite a nice bit.
I mean,
you
that
should be able to
already
sustain problem.
is with
Here's
the Thief,
the only
though.
problem I have, right? There's one major problem with this build, too. You're going to be dependent on spell pot. I think he goes over that, but you're going to be dependent on it. And if you're going to be using bosses, well,
yes,
that's a problem.
Yes, PvE, you always use spell power potions? I guess this guy is super. He doesn't do endgame PvE. At least when he does, it fails spectacularly. But yeah, endgame PvE, you're always using spell power potions because that's how you maintain major sorcery and major prophecy. So I don't know why the reliance on pots is such a bad
'Cause
thing.
you're
You
drinking
do it
pots,
anyways as a PvE player.
But we'll go over the stat sheet review. We'll see what his Burning Embers is going to be procking up at. And
I don't know
his
what he means
engulfing
by
flames and
procking
stuff,
up
his
at.
dots. Because, I'll be going over my build and we'll do a comparison in the dot range in the stat sheet.
He seems obsessed
I'm
with
sure the
stats.
man's great. Because this is the meta. Am I right? Whatever he says is meta.
Hold on, wait a second.
Am I wrong?
I just
Am I
realized
wrong?
he has DPS meters down here. I'm not sure if you guys can see. It might be a little bit blurry. A lot of these are too short to really make a judgment call. There's two that are long enough to really make a judgment call. 5 minutes, 17 seconds. This is on the trial dummy, so you have all the raid buffs. 31.3k DPS. 5 minutes, 17 seconds. The other one was 44.6k DPS on 2 minutes, 28 seconds. Those are really low, considering PvE numbers. Even back when I quit, like that is abysmal. That is like abysmally low if you're taking a look at endgame PvE numbers.
The man knows math,
comparing
right?
those numbers.
Am I wrong?
Oh no, here come ads. Let's get these when
Where are we practicing today, Daddy? Yeah, where are we practicing today?
Oh, we going someplace.
Happy Veterans Day, by the way, to all my servicemen and women out there.
Okay,
This
that's
is
pretty
meta!
random, but sure.
Fucking god dang it. Okay, so I'm going to drink it and dump immediately.
Oh, that's real painful.
Now I just want to get that Sororia proc. And then we're going to see the scale.
I don't think you. I think you like leave like
our
maybe
crit
2 times.
width has been up to 61.5. I think we can get a little bit more out of it. So
Let me see how bosses work. It's like obviously I haven't played. Not bosses. Harpooners.
67 and 63.8. So we got a 67 spell damage. That's pretty good.
So dealing
Now we should be
direct
out of max
damage.
stat. So our max crit's going to be 63 with this build. With the 67, it looks like a 67.
The big issue I'm seeing here is the fact
Spell
that he's not light weaving, so he's missing out a bunch of quick stacks of Hunter's Focus. That shouldn't make it be a big deal, but
65.
it will make a difference
About 65,
in
67.
PvE content where you want to get it as
with the max
quickly as you can.
63.
Yeah, because light
38,000
attacks count as
max
direct
magic.
damage. I mean, yes, his spam
No.
will also counts as direct damage,
That's
but
interesting.
you
Now,
still kind of
we're
want to
gonna
make sure
see-
to get that light weaving going.
How that's going to affect his skill. Burning Embers has gotten up to 26.5. Flames is 20. That's pretty impressive. 26 and 20, roughly. That's pretty good. Even, whatever. Now, a lot of times you're not going to use Kilt. He'll go over that. Death Feat. I think he's done a really good job there. Now, if you weren't using bosses, you would get a lot more just for the simple fact that you could take out the inner light. So I'm just going to mention that right from the rip by slotting the Camo Hunter instead.
Why would you
Okay.
slot Camo Hunter?
But
unless there's a
bosses,
passive
the more
change
you
that
go
happened
down,
in
and the whips are
in a
hitting
later
really
patch.
nice in this build. So, given the fact that bosses, the more you're going down, and the fact that the
see, ESO
combustion,
skills.
is every 5, it does give you a nice range. But when you hit that pot for that spell power, it boosts up significantly. So, he's adapted well, in my opinion.
No, it's probably from the
And
minor
I'm-
berserk
and,
after you
I'm
deal
not
crit
trying to
damage
be
from the
whatever.
enemy's flank.
He's adapted well to the flawless.
You don't really need that.
He's adapted well to the barb trap because I said Medusa's isn't going to be utilized anymore. Why?
See if there's anything in
You're
like
gonna
the
get
fighter
more.
skills passive.
Medusa's is out the fucking
Oh,
door.
okay. So you get the 3% additional spell damage.
It's garbage. El Nito. El
Mm.
done. Right? It's done.
Generally speaking, I think the additional max magicka from Inner Light, I think you also get something else from, check the Mage's Guild tree real fast for passives. Yeah, because you get Inner Light, which gives you the 5% from there. Then your passives get you an additional 2%, so that would give you, and the magicka regen, so that'll give you an additional 7% max magicka compared to 3% spell damage. It would really depend on the stats. But I think generally speaking, you're going to want a little bit more max magicka than spell damage. The 3%, it should end up being about equal, I think, but I don't know what the endgame
My only
values
problem
are
with this,
look
like if people
for
don't have
max magicka and
perfected,
spell damage.
they're going to be having a double stat on the Slayer. Therein lies the problem.
Again, we already touched upon why the double minus Slayer doesn't make a difference,
When you're
and
on
the
this
perfected
bar, you have
doesn't really matter
a
either, because
stat
the only thing the perfected adds is the additional stat line, which is great, but ultimately the additional stat line doesn't actually add too much in terms of damage, because it's just your standard armor bonus. It's not anything. It's not like 2 armor bonuses or something like that. The 5 piece itself doesn't change. So like the difference between perfected Reliquin and normal Reliquin is just the additional armor bonus on that that 5 piece. And the idea behind double up on trial sets is the fact that the unique 5 piece bonus is strong enough that it would outweigh a second set's 5 piece bonus plus the standard armor bonus. So the fact that it's perfected versus not perfected, that doesn't really matter for this discussion at all.
It's gone. Because you have a static Bases with a minor Slayer.
Seems really hung up on this whole minor Slayer thing, which is not a big deal. Like people were bringing up back when we did Reliquin and Laquestes, oh, you're doubling
on your
minor Slayer,
staff,
but the math works out that the 5 piece outweighs the minor Slayer.
I give it up to the fact that the man also knows about the 2 medium, and that, you know, he did make the recommendation or whatever, and the daggers to the staffs, you know, as far as statting and whatever, and how he talks about range. He puts
enchant on
good
that.
clarification there. But this is the meta. This was the stats. This was a stat review. Now, 3 bloodthirsties, I don't do it. But let's go over my stats.
Oh, he's using Burning Spellweave. Why would he use Burning Spellweave?
I use 1 bloodthirsty. Why? I want that extra fucking damage 90% of the time.
Oh, here's going to be an issue that I don't think he actually knows about. Conditional stat increases in ESO are not reflected on your character's information sheet. So Bloodthirsty is not reflected. Thororia is, because it is just a direct increase, but it's not conditional. Basically, you have a stack of something, it's a buff, so it would directly increase your stats. Bloodthirsty does not. Anything that has a conditional rider on it usually doesn't reflect on the character's stat sheet. So something like Spell Strategist, for example, back when I used to play, Spell Strategist was a thing. It might still be a thing, I don't know. But the Spell Strategist was when you hit something with a light attack, you marked it, and when you attack the marked enemy, you get additional 500 spell damage or something like that. It was pretty strong for single target. But the 500 spell damage was not reflected on your character's spell sheet because it had a rider that was not a direct buff on you. So Bloodthirsty is not a direct buff on you. It is just a passive trait, so it won't actually be reflected on your stat sheet. So I anticipate that he's going to be like, oh look, I'm wearing 2 infused and my spell damage is higher, but he's completely disregarding the fact that Bloodthirsty is not reflected on your spell sheet, and neither is damage done or damage taken. Damage taken debuff, I should say, on the enemy. You can't see the enemy stat sheet anyways, but I don't think damage done is reflected on the character stat sheet either.
I ain't gonna fucking lie. I don't fucking think so. Now, I could set this up for the kilt, but I don't even need the fucking kilt. I could. I very well could.
I mean,
because that's what I've said.
If you're not using the kilt, then you're going to be using Monster Set instead.
Introduced everybody to that. Hashtag timestamps matter.
I don't get why he thinks he's the first for everything. We've already, or I shouldn't say we, I'm not part of them anymore, but the endgame PvE geographic community probably has figured stuff out like day 1 of PTS or day 2 of PTS very, very easily. there's enough of
the
people out there
behemoths,
to
you
testing
want
stuff
it.
on the PTS
But
on the
let's
day
say
of
the tank
release
has it.
that you
What did I
probably
say the
know
options
pretty
were?
much everything by the time like the second or third day
Dalmahas. Now, I think he
of
does
release.
go over that in there, but definitely Dalmahas.
Domi's not great.
Now, I'm taking
Domi
Slime
is
Pro out,
not fantastic.
right? And we'll put what? Infuse max health. There's a diminishing return. There's math involved.
Why would you do that?
It's called,
You're basically gimping yourself there by adding an additional max health. You don't need to max health. Your goal as DPS is to do as much damage as you possibly can, and anything going counter to that is just reducing your overall effectiveness. Health is important, but the way that ESO damage works, a lot of it is it's a dot that's going to kill you because it ticks too hard, or the initial damage is going to kill you because it hits for 20k and you only have like 17k health, 18k health or something like that. So adding the additional max health, especially an infused max health,
ignore the law of diminishing marginal return,
wrong.
It bites you in the ass every fucking time.
Also, I'm not sure what he means by the law of diminishing returns. This is not addressing diminishing returns, like using a health versus max magicka, because you're not getting any sort of direct benefit to DPS by introducing your max health, especially if it's an infused max health. If it was divines, I could argue, okay, that's a little bit okay because you're still getting the additional bonus to your Mundus Stone, but infused only affects that max health enchant. And you don't really need max health. You have enough health in ESO to really survive any mechanic, as long as you're avoiding it. So yeah, I don't know what he's talking about with the whole like diminishing returns thing. Yes, it is. You're getting less relative value out of a stat the more you're investing into a stat. You can argue that is sort of diminishing returns, but I don't know what he's doing here. This change that he says is so important is not. This is just a direct gimping of your overall DPS. Every
time. Now, I'm actually going to leave his rotation on the board for the most part, except I'm going to make one alteration because I have to. I'm going to make two, actually. So, because I'm going to be using the daggers and the lightning staff.
More gimping.
Spell powered cure.
We already talked about lightning staff.
Daggers in the front bar is fine. I would never get caught, even as a DK, with a flame staff. All of my AoEs always
you're not getting the buff.
Laid on a lightning staff.
You're not getting the buff.
I don't give a fuck.
We already discussed this. He's not getting the buff.
I don't give a flying fuck who you think you are. You ignoring math?
That's not ignoring math. That's just ignoring how the game operates. The fact that AoEs, AoE dots dynamically update. They don't snapshot, like in Final Fantasy or other
He's
MMOs.
using Eruption on this bar. Lightning Staff, 608. He's going to use Mystical Orbs on this bar, 1816. Those two, even Scalding Ruin, right? I believe, AoE, 87. Let's put that fucking piece of shit Flame Staff back on.
He also has to realize that he has to make sure he's putting on a burning
sleeve. Down.
He doesn't realize this is just his misunderstanding of how the game operates. Those numbers are not accurate with the lightning staff because the dots are going to dynamically change. You can test it out yourself on ESO. Put down a lightning staff, have a fire staff front bar, lay down your wall of lightning or any sort of other AoE dot you want, and then switch to your front bar. If you have your damage numbers active, you'll see that your damage does dynamically change. It's higher when you're in your lightning staff, but it'll be lower on your front bar, even though you did lay it down with the lightning staff. This is just a fundamental misunderstanding of how the game mechanics work. And that's not something that you can really change.
Down to justify a wall for a combustion passive. Congratulations.
Yeah, he has no idea what he's talking about when he's talking about
lose 3 damaging effects.
He has no idea how the game mechanics actually work.
You're going to nerf your AoEs to stupidity.
No,
that's what it is.
You're not nerfing the AoEs. In any case, your AoEs generally speaking are going to be contributing a huge amount of DPS compared comparatively
or is it
to
not?
your
Yes.
spammable and your light attacks. It's always been the
That's
case.
stupidity.
Your AoEs generally will be, I
Even
guess
with
on a
this build,
MagDK
you know,
it'll contribute more
it's
DPS, but
impressive.
generally
I'm
speaking,
not
your
gonna
AoEs are
rag
going to
on
be less than
everything about
50%
it,
of your
but
DPS.
that's
Usually it's going to
stupidity.
be hovering around a third of your DPS.
Okay. Now, I'm not using boss A's. That set can suck my dick.
Okay.
And since I don't need it,
I mean, you don't have to use it.
fuck,
The
I'm
beauty
taking
of
the extra
ESO is
fucking
that it's
spell
horizontal
damage.
progression rather than
Y'all
vertical
can
like
kiss
in other
my
MMOs,
motherfucking
so you don't
ass.
have to use boss A's. If you have it, I would recommend using it because it's very clearly a very
And I'm
strong
going to
set for
take the
magic DPS.
least, the goddamn least effective ability, because what's this going to do?
Why would
It's
you
going
take?
to amp my shit up.
Oh,
Now
he's
let's take
doing
a
the
look at my
stupid mouse
stat
from
sheet.
shit.
Already, I got him beat in the crit department without even a kilt. Right?
There are so many things wrong with this build.
71. I don't even have a kill. 7,700 spell damage. Not six. Not.
So yes, his crit is higher, but his effective spell damage is going to end up being lower. Partially because he has lower max magicka, but also because he doesn't have Bloodthirsty, and Bloodthirsty is not reflected on this sheet at all. So that like whatever value P was harping on about earlier, that doesn't take into consideration Bloodthirsty, because that is conditional, so it will not be reflected on the stat sheet. Even though his crit is higher, his actual spell damage might be higher on the sheet, but his effective spell damage is going to end up being lower. And so his overall damage modifiers are going to be lower as well, also because he's missing out on the damage done modifiers from boss A's, which is not reflected anywhere on this particular sheet here. At least back when I played, you had to manually add up all your damage done bonuses, and boss A's is a pretty substantial damage done bonus.
7,700.
So
70 fucking 700 with 71 crit.
Oh, more ads.
We are establishing a new Amazon minimum wage of $15 an hour.
Amazon.
Did I just beat the meta?
No, you didn't.
I even kept the rotation except swapped out one ability.
You didn't.
Stat wise, did I just beat him?
No, you didn't.
Did I?
You did not.
Did I beat his stats?
Apparently his dog is also quite angry at him too.
You guys listen to dumbass shit.
So he is hung up on stats. He doesn't realize that, again, the conditional Bloodthirsty is not reflected in your stat sheet. So Skinny's build will continue to get stronger. You'll have higher spell damage towards the end here. Skinny's build also has higher max magicka, which converts directly to your effective spell damage, which is not reflected in the stat sheet. That's something you have to actually calculate out yourself. His damage done modifier is lower. Skinny has the boss A, so it's higher. That's also not reflected on the stat sheet. And your damage done percentage, it is going to vary depending on your other stats, but generally speaking, damage done is a more powerful modifier than spell damage is going to be, in terms of like percentage to spell damage sort of thing. Plus, Flurry is on a mag DPS. No, you can't sustain that. There's no way you can sustain that. At least not with what he has. Maybe with like a poison glyph or something like that. Maybe because it's a new combustion. But even that is very, very iffy. He's hung up on like the numbers on the sheets when the numbers on the sheets are not an accurate representation of what's happening in the game. Yeah.
If you follow this shit and forget fundamentals, especially when it comes to 7 fucking divine, you fucking are dipshit. You don't do math.
The thing with 7 divines is that divines is still the strongest armor trait. Infused got buffed, yes, but divines is still a lot stronger, or not a lot stronger, but it is better than infused.
You're going to replace a lightning staff with AoEs on it for a flame for a combustion pass.
Or we talked about this. It's just fundamental. He doesn't know how the game works.
No, you don't. You don't do math.
Yeah, this guy's okay.
He gets a D.
A D?
The only reason he didn't get the F
That's
because he
bold.
adapted the medium.
That's a bold. That's a
And,
bold statement.
The Fighters Guild 2 abilities. He's a meta god.
So you
He's
should
a
listen to
meta
him.
god.
You should listen to him.
Description's in the link there.
All right, I think that's pretty much everything. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff wrong with what he's saying. A lot of stuff. It seems like he's just as crazy and anti-meta as he was back, a year and a half, 2 years ago, or however long it was when I used to play. Yeah. Just this entire video just sort of demonstrates his misunderstanding behind game mechanics, the core game mechanics. So yeah, he's a crazy man. I'll leave the link to this video in the description, I suppose, but I'll also drop a link to the Skinny Cheeks video as well, in case you guys want to listen to somebody who actually knows what they're talking about. But yeah, I guess that's it. I don't know if this is what you guys were expecting, but yeah. Anyways, that's it for me. Just kind of wanted to see what was happening in ESO, and this was something that was thrown my way, and I was like, oh, I haven't watched one of his videos in a while, so let's see what's going on. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. I'll catch you guys later.